Hello students, it's Dr. Newmark here. We are going to go through a few of the chapters from Sasha Costanza-Chalk's Design Justice. Now, I was going to cover all three chapters that you read of this book for today, but I'm actually just going to cover a couple of them because it is pretty dense. It requires a lot of intellectual and emotional energy to read through, and it's asking you to sort of dovetail a lot of concepts from various fields together in order to really understand and appreciate the ethos that it's putting forward. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into some of the key concepts from the introduction and from the first chapter that you read, the last chapter or the first and second chapters that you read, and then the third chapter that you read, I'm not going to cover in this video, but it concerns who gets to design, sort of that domain or province of training or access to that area of production is really interesting, and I hope that you read it and think about it and maybe write about it in the discussion board. So without further ado, okay, so Design Justice, Community-Led Practices to Build the Worlds We Need. So this is a really provocative title, and I want you to think about some of the claims that the book makes just right out of the gate. So in the introduction, the author shares an experience that is a small but concrete example from the author's daily lived experience of how larger systems, including norms, values, and assumptions, are encoded in and reproduced through the design of socio-technical systems. Or in political theory, as Langdon Winner's famous words, how artifacts have politics. I've mentioned in other videos that the research that I do concerns Bureau of Indian Affairs documents, forms, instruction sets, report templates. I see this every day in the experiences that I have in the National Archives, that what people think are innocuous or neutral documents, I see political implications everywhere. So this comment absolutely resonated with me in a very different kind of register than the one that Costanza-Chalk experienced in the anecdote that's shared at the start of the book. So the author adds, I worry that the current path of AI development will reproduce systems that erase those of us on the margins, whether intentionally or not, through the mundane and relentless repetition of reductive norms structured by the matrix of domination. Now, no punches are pulled here. These are very strong statements, and I want you to think about whether you see examples of these matrices of domination in your daily life at all, whether you've had similar, very different experiences from the author, and just sort of challenge yourself to think seriously about the issues that are raised in the chapter. So next, based on what you are gathering from Costanza-Chalk's work, how is design inherently and historically political? I gave examples of my work with historical bureaucratic documents and how I've long argued in published work and conference presentations, and to any students that will listen to me, that they are inherently and historically political. We might ask, following the author, how might community-based design and co-design efforts help to attend to the needs of historically marginalized populations who have been end users of all kinds of design outputs? I had a colleague from Michigan Tech who was involved with designing accident report forms with the local indigenous nation that was near the campus. And so by collaborating with the tribe, with the local predominantly non-native police force, and with some academic TechCom folks from Michigan Tech, they were able to redesign these accident reporting forms so that tribes people who were in accidents or were those suffering as a result of vehicular accidents were more inclined to complete the reporting forms so that the outcome could be resolved as a result of the filing of the form, and better data could be collected as a result of these revised form designs. So that's one example of how involving the people who are often the subject of the form or of the design in its actual production can generate better statistics of use, I suppose. So to put a fine point on how Costanza Chalk situates design at its core, design frequently refers to expert knowledge and practices contained within a particular set of professionalized fields, including graphic design, fashion design, interaction design, industrial design, architecture planning, and various other industries. How do alternative histories of technology enable an expanded sense of such definitions or locations of design? If you think critically about it, things everywhere around you are designed, and they're designed with certain assumptions about who is using them. From the videos you watch in this class, to the textbooks you read, to the learning management system that we interact with all the time, to the very classrooms and buildings that you travel through during your academic career, to the office you work in at your place of employment. Those are all designed spaces, and they have certain assumptions about who's going to be in them. So Costanza Chalk pushes against the now popular term design thinking, quoting Lily Irani, who critiques the way that design thinking is deployed to reproduce a colonial political economy, with design imagined at the top of the value chain as a key process to be managed only by firms from the global north and as a mechanism for the reproduction of whiteness. It's a very provocative claim. I've actually included an infographic on the screen from the Design Justice Network that you can pause the video and look more closely at. I want you to think about, per the author's analysis, what the difference is between intersectional analysis and single axis analysis, even within the domain of design. So how do these concepts relate to universal design? This actually gets picked up in the next chapter. And I think it's actually delivered with quite a lot of nuance, and I want you to think about how that is considered in this chapter. So what is design justice? That term, which is the title of the book, is defined on page 23. So go back and take a look at that. Okay, so in your mind, how do you interpret Chapter 1's claim that there is a poor fit between Facebook's affordances and basic activist needs? So this is just one example. I'm not saying that, this is the central thesis of this book, but in this anecdote shared by the author, think about how in that example, it didn't occur to the organization that was trying to use Facebook to promote an event that its affordances were very well calibrated with their needs. So why is monetization much more important than the other goals Costanza Chalk emphasizes? Do dominant socio-technical systems, in this case Facebook, as you see and use them in your own life, appear to reinforce systems of power, or do they ever challenge them? So think about whether you've had any experiences with that. So why are these questions of concern, to sort of drill down into exactly what we're doing in this class in an English department in a technical communication course? Why are these questions of interest to us, to TPC folks like us, and those who are interested in usability and user-centered design? So on the subject of affordances, Costanza Chalk quotes Don Norman, and I've also put a quote by Norman up on the screen, and you'll read a book by Norman later this semester. Costanza Chalk writes, for Norman, affordance refers to the perceived and actual properties of the thing, primarily those fundamental properties that determine just how the thing could possibly be used. But are affordances equally perceptible to all people? Costanza Chalk really pushes against some of the assumptions that Don Norman has in that very important and seminal or foundational work, The Design of Everyday Things, and points out some blind spots, some oversights in that volume. And indeed, another text that you're going to read later this semester, Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think, is also mentioned. But Costanza Chalk includes many examples of designs, including educational software design, that assumes a certain set of attributes or identifies in the imagined user certain characteristics. For example, that the default assumed user is male. So another example concerns Facebook's real names versus fake names consideration, and how this had inherent bias against certain groups of people. Costanza Chalk does mention, as I said, Steve Krug's Don't Make Me Think in some of the oversights in that really popular million-selling book that is referred to as the Bible of Interface Design. So finally, and this is the last point I'm going to make, because I could go on and on in this video and it could become indeed like a lecture, which I wanted to stay away from. I wanted to make these videos more food for thought, to reinforce some of the central points from the readings, rather than to really sort of pontificate and expand on some of the ideas. But so in the interest of just reminding you of some of the main topics of consideration in some of these chapters, I want you to think about what the author has to say about A/B testing, which is very common in usability testing as a methodology. So what is problematic about its basic assumptions in the general vein of the overall argument of this book? So in the interest of keeping this video quite short, I'm going to sign off there. I've hit upon enough major ideas from these first 2 chapters to keep you thinking for a good long time, and to use them to shed light on ideas addressed in the 3rd chapter from this book that you read for this week. So on that note, I will see you in next week's video.